One of the most important things is to understand what the company is that you're trying to get work from. So many people write to us with standard covering letters and things, assuming they know what we do without actually spending any time listening or watching the output, which is quite crazy, really. So as soon as I notice something that's glaringly wrong, I think, well, there's no point in that in dealing with them because they don't know what we do, for a start. But I think the thing for me is you don't do media. Media is about life, it's about people, it's about things beyond radio and TV and online and all the various things that are in this room today. And I find that there are so many people who come to me who they just want to do media. They're not interested in the rest of the world around them. And I think that is telling, really. And it's really, really important that, you know, like, for example, this year alone, as a production company, we've done programs on female rappers, we've done programs on gambling, we've done programs on Oscar Wilde, we've done children's programs. I'm just about to do a program about Europe. It's so varied. You need to be adaptable, you need to be interested in the world around you and not think that you can specialise and everything, because the chances of being able to specialise nowadays are, you know, virtually nil, really. You've got to be as versatile as possible and take an interest in the world. And I tell you, the people who tend to impress me the most, not all, because I'm from a news background, I know that, you know, I was a keen journalist, wants to know what was going on around the world, and I was curious. But the people who have impressed me most are those who've had some background in acting, actually, whether it be amateur dramatics or drama, or they've done something where, for some reason, they tend to stand out really well. I'm not saying other people don't stand out, they do, but they tend to stand out more because I think there's something about that kind of role where you have to empathise with people, you have to be interested in things that you're not necessarily automatically interested in. So yeah, the biggest thing for me is being interested in something other than appearing on the radio or the TV, because so many of the topics we cover, so many things we have to get our teeth into are not instantly things you're necessarily going to be, you know, it's not necessarily going to be your hobby to, you know, be into female rappers or Oscar Wilde or whatever, but that's the range of things that we end up having to do. And it's probably more so in the independent production sector because we have to be so versatile with ideas, whereas in telly and in-house in BBC and ITV, I would presume, you'll probably correct me in a moment, but a lot of the time you are in departments where you're focusing and specialising on things. We have to be as versatile as anything, and that's what you've got to be. You've got to be really, really versatile and be interested in everything that's happening around you.
I think there's really good points, actually. Relentless curiosity, a passion and an interest and a love of people will carry you through, I think, in a variety of different roles in different genres, because it doesn't. You have to have that power behind you to be interested in people, to be interested in the new ideas, to be interested in the new technology. I think being adaptive is absolutely crucial. And it's interesting the point you raise about to specialise and not to specialise. At BBC North, I don't know if you're aware that the ethos there is collaborative, trans-platform, trans-genre. The challenge is for people to move from genre to genre, from platform to platform, from role to role, to mix the software developers in with the program makers, to make mix the app developers in with the people who are coming up with the creative ideas, so the things can happen closer together, so they're more connected, saves time, saves money, gets greater ideas to the fore. So in that environment, I think the ask of the individual is quite high. The level of engagement is quite weighty. You know, you can't sort of fly by night. So it's important to be committed, I think, if you want to get on to succeed. There's a commitment required.
Do you think that within that, Louise, there's a tendency for people to become Jacks and Jacquelines of all things and not quite master of any of them, in terms of the breadth of skills that might be involved within multi-platforming?
I can see that might be something that arises as a question, but the requirement for you to be, for example, a great storyteller that would remain your specialism. If you're working in television or radio or online, surely it's the stories that are our currency, and perhaps the multi-skilling element is how you do it or how you deliver it or how you share it. So I think we're still required to be tremendous specialists on one very particular level.
Yeah. Patrick?
to be fair, we're all production people with a factual kind of background. If you had drama people up here, or technical people, they'd probably tell you something different. I'll tell you the thing that always used to impress me. I was running children's television. Used to get a lot of people writing in saying, I'm really interested in children's television, please give me a job. The ones that impressed me were the ones who actually clearly, from their letter, did love children's television, knew what we made, had clearly watched it and had an opinion about it. And those are the people we would invite in for interview. I remember sitting in, we used to have at Yorkshire Television a trainee scheme. We used to get, every year, we would take on 2 trainees every year. Fantastic, they got paid. We used to rotate them around the department. So they'd go into Louise's department, which is factual. They'd come to children's for a bit, they'd work on calendar news, and they'd rotate around. And I sometimes sat in on the interview panels for those. There was one poor girl came in, and the first question was, what do you think of some of our programmes? And this girl said, oh, I really like Coronation Street. Well, we didn't make Coronation Street, we made Emmerdale, but and then so we pointed that out to her, and she said, "Oh, I've been really busy. I haven't been able to watch much telly recently." So the person who was running the panel said, "Did you sit in reception while you were waiting for the interview?" And she said, "Oh, yes, I did. At last, a question I can answer. I did." She said, "Did you notice any pictures on the walls with the names of the programmes underneath them?" And this poor girl, she kind of realised, and she basically said, "I'll get my coat." And we said, "That's probably the best idea." And I think that thing, you've got to show, if you're running a department like I was, or you're a producer, or if you're a runner in a department, you are immersed in that department or that company. You know everything about what they make, you care about it, you're passionate about it. So when somebody comes in from outside, what you've got to demonstrate is that you're equally passionate so that you'll fit in. And the 2 key qualities that you need are enthusiasm and passion, I think. If you're enthusiastic and passionate, you'll get a job, because that's what people like. It's the most important quality, I think. Yeah. And that's how you can stand in the field at 4 o'clock in the morning in the rain and still be enthusiastic to try and make good telly.
Yeah, well, I think enthusiasm is just a generally good quality in life, isn't it? To be enthusiastic about whatever you're doing. Just following on from that, I mean, does this kind of ability to, essentially know all these different areas from Oscar Wilde to children's programmes and all the rest, how important is it for people who want to get a start to understand, one, how a particular programme and how a broadcaster operates, and 2, how their particular goals and interests and what they want to do can segue into it?
Yeah, I think the landscape is very different and very changeable at the moment. Obviously, you've got the BBC and you've got the big broadcasters, but you've also got a lot of independent production companies out there. In fact, there's a session, I'm going to plug it now for you. Fast Train, next week there's a session on working with indies, and there's various other sessions which are the BBC Fast Train. You want to give it a quick plug before I...
How could I resist that opportunity? You're all invited. All freelancers are invited to a free 1-day training day, which is produced by the BBC Academy and Creative Skill Set, and BECTU and the Radio Indie Group, which Ashley also uses to pull together. Networking, a great opportunity through the Indie Group. And also York University and the Heslington Studios are doing a whole series, more than 200 individual training sessions, as well as 14 different masterclasses are free to you, and more tickets are being released tomorrow. There's another tranche of tickets. Fast Train North, Eventbrite. That's where the tickets are through, and you can see the details there.
Sounds interesting.
Sounds interesting, does it? A word from our sponsor. But is there genuinely an opportunity to look at what training is on offer so you can plug some skills gaps or move forward? Because I think the important thing is not necessarily... There is what you wish to do, and there's also what people need.
Yeah.
And a lot of the training sessions, for example, at Fast Train around Java and HTML and engineering, or voice coaching on radio side, that they are things that also people need more of. And I think to really understand your market is extremely important, so that you know not only your USP and where you want to go, but where that will fit will save you a lot of heartache.
exactly, yeah. And we're going back to what we were saying was that what I wanted to make, the point I wanted to make is that the indie sector in TV and in radio is so different really than the in-house side of things, the big broadcasting side of things, because we have to be so fleet of foot, we have to be so adaptable. Our currency really is ideas more than anything, and if people are coming to me wanting work, I want to hear their ideas. I want, it's a real opportunity. It's not, it's not a perfect opportunity, because obviously we as indies still have to impress the broadcasters to get the commissions, to get the money and all the rest of it. But you've got a real opportunity, particularly with smaller indies, to work with us, organically, and to develop your ideas and to see things flourish. Because I've had people come to me who've had ideas that wouldn't fit necessarily any of the radio stations or the BBC, for example, but I like them so much that I found another outlet for them, or we funded them ourselves, or we did something in order to make them happen. So I think the independent sector gives you a real opportunity to push those ideas and those things that you really want to do, because we're pretty adaptable in that sense. The other thing I would say is that I think we've got to think less of, and I mentioned it to you before, of thinking I'm going to work for the BBC forever, I'm going to work for ITV, I'm going to work for Sky or whatever. I think we've got to start thinking, and those are great, proud organisations, and I love them all in their own way, but I think we've all got to think of ourselves really as creative entrepreneurs. It's such a competitive marketplace. You need to think about yourself as that, that entity. You've got all these skills, you've got all these things to offer. You can work with the BBC, you can work with an indie, you can work with Sky, you can work with all these different organisations. So yeah, I think that's the way we're going. I think more and more you've got to think of yourself as the creative entrepreneur. And the tendency, I think, is that some people come to me for work, or we might give them 6 months doing something or whatever, whereby there's a project that we're able to pay them for, and obviously, unfortunately, money runs out and they have to leave and all the rest of it. And the problem is sometimes is that although they've managed to gain lots of skills from working for us, sometimes that's a dead end for them, because they've got secure for 6 months, and it's like, oh, where do I go next? What do I need to do next? You've really got to think beyond this world of being in the same job for a long time. It's just I don't think it's going to happen in the future, and even within big organisations, people are on 6-month contracts and things like that, have to be renewed and all the time. So yeah, I mean, it's cruel really, because it's really sad, because there are a lot of people out there who've got really, really great talent, and if there was more money in the pot to be able to pay people for longer periods, it'd be fantastic, but there just isn't. That's the world we live in, so you've got to be really adaptable. Yeah.
So in terms of that kind of having that competitive edge that people might need, is there any kind of practical things, say, in terms of, do you use Twitter to kind of find out who's out there, who's kind of leading that particular race? I mean, what things can people, practical ideas, can people engage with?
I think there's a tremendous opportunity today that wasn't around 5 years ago to test your filmmaking, to test your software, to test your storytelling, your radio stories on the internet. There's a way of broadcasting and getting a following to test what you're doing that just simply wasn't available. So if you take something to a commissioner or to a broadcaster or to a future employee and say, I made this, I've got this, and look at all the people who like it, you stand so much stronger a chance of being able to get that commission, that employment, that 6-month contract. I think that is unique to this generation, to the people, to us today. We can do that, and there are numerous examples of people who have been employed off their presenting online, off the apps that they've developed, off the websites that they've made. That kind of an environment is, I think, lively.
And you can make money out of it.
And you can make money out of it. It's always helpful.
I mean, I just picking up on what Ashley said about ideas. I do think ideas are the currency. I also think there are thousands and thousands and thousands of ideas, and it's really important to be generous with ideas, not to like keep them to yourself. You know, the more ideas you come up with, the more your idea muscle works. And it's one of the things I'm always saying to my students. You know, be free with your ideas, give your ideas away. The more ideas you come up with, and generally speaking, and I kind of touch wood when I say it, but most people in this industry are pretty honest about stuff like that. I mean, if you tell Ashley a great idea, he's not going to run off and nick it, and you'll hear it on Radio 4 next week. You know, he'll employ you on the show, because that's what people do. Because none of us have got an interest.
The process isn't that quick anyway.
Yeah, well, that's true. But you can't, you know, you can't be in a position of nicking people's ideas, because nobody would ever come to you with another one if it got out. So people generally are very honest about it. So I wouldn't hesitate to give ideas away. I mean, we always used to, again, ask people for ideas as a standard part of any interview. We'd say, right, you know, what ideas for shows have you got? What ideas for items have you got, if they wanted to be on a particular show?
I mean, I think you're possibly being a little bit over benevolent there, Patrick, because I think there's also the notion that, you know, look at Simon Cowell and the X Factor based on some, you know, talent show. I think that people need to value their own ideas, research and legwork that they might well have put into projects.
Yeah,
I mean, do you not think
that
I mean, do you not believe in intellectual property?
Oh yeah, no, of course, and I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the ideas clearly have value, and they are the currency. Just that there are millions and millions of ideas. What there isn't is the money to make them and the slots to put them in. I mean, I've got some fantastic ideas that haven't been commissioned for some strange reason that I can't understand. And you know, it's the point is you've got to put those ideas out there. There has to be a moment at which that idea becomes something more than an idea. And the only way to do that is to tell it to somebody. So what I'm saying is, don't worry about telling your ideas to people, because actually the freer you are with ideas, the better the ideas are. I mean, it's interesting as well, because most ideas don't come from one person.
Absolutely.
Almost all ideas. I mean, this is actually an issue. There's nobody here from ITV, is there? Okay, this is an issue at ITV, because they've got a system where if you come up with an idea, you can put it into a pot, and if it gets developed, you get 250 quid, and if it gets made, you share in the pot. The issue is, almost every idea comes from more than one person. You know, you're in an ideas meeting, and somebody says, let's do this, and somebody else says, oh, no, we could do that. And somebody else says, whose idea is that? The person who first said it, or the people who then developed it? And that's an issue they've got, because they often, you know, production teams fall apart because one person puts in for the create scheme saying that was my idea. Actually, everybody contributed to it, and they feel they should have a share of it. And I think that's why it's very difficult often to identify who actually came up with an idea.
Yeah.
So
I think it's that difference really in terms of the currency of ideas. You know, monkey tennis, great, love it, and actually spending, you know, months in the Congo working with chimps to see if they can actually play tennis.
The hardest thing of all is knowing which idea to spend the development money on, because actually nobody really knows what will work and what won't work. You know, you're just guessing a lot of the time. So that's why I turned down the Teletubbies. No, I didn't really.
That was after the Beatles, was it?
An interesting time.
Come on, friend.
I appreciate what you just said. But how do you protect great ideas?
There's a session on IP on Prime.
For the rest of the audience.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can.
Yeah, I appreciate what you just said on the panel, but I think today, in this times that we're living, with being able to post on so many networks and all the rest of it, how do you protect your idea initially?
Well, one thing I would say is, from a trade union point of view, BECTU does have a kind of copyright arrangement that if you become a member, you can actually register the copyright within that. I think it's one of these, you know, ideas can be 10 a penny, but if you've actually spent time developing a script, developing a treatment, possibly lining interviews up, and all that kind of thing, that to my mind is worth protecting, and that can be done through a trade union.
There's no copyright in ideas. You can't copyright an idea. You can only copyright the expression of an idea. So you're absolutely right. You know, if you've written the script, that can be copyrighted, but you can't copyright the idea itself. And also, ideas are in the air. It's really worth bearing that in mind, that everybody reads the same magazines, the same newspapers, they watch the same TV shows. So what used to happen to me, quite often, because I used to get sent a lot of unsolicited ideas, I would often get sent, 3 or 4 that were virtually identical to each other. Well, one of them we might have picked and developed and gone with. The other 3 people would all say, oh, they nicked my idea, but we didn't. It's just they were similar ideas that got sent in. It's a very common thing that happens.
Yeah, it's a sort of strange synchronicity, coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, anniversaries are always a big thing when it comes to a lot of ideas in factual programming, and unfortunately, people are going to come up with similar ideas around anniversaries. That's the way it is.
It's unfortunate, really. It's become that such a predictable format within television and radio to a certain extent. Yet another anniversary, yet another looking back into the past without a great deal of perception.
Although, if the gentleman would like to learn specifics about IP, intellectual property, and how to retain it in ideas and programmes and apps, there is indeed a session on that next Tuesday at Fast Train.
Is it a fast train?
It is.
Could that be a fast
There
train,
is a
Louise?
creative skill set. I've put together a session on IP. To answer those very specific questions.
I think there's one thing I'd like to say from I don't know how much time we've got left, but from a practical perspective, is that there aren't enough jobs around for everybody. It's a real cruel, horrible thing to say, but there just aren't, to be honest. And in the world that we live in, and I think people have got to. This is where I'm very, very impressed with people from the acting fraternity, because they live in that world where they're greatly passionate about what they do all the time, but they know from the outset that they're not always going to be in work. There might be times when they get 6 months on Coronation Street, but then they might get 6 years with no work at all. They understand it, they get it, and I think our world is very much like that. And I think nowadays, and I think that you've got to be. It's a way of life. It's not just a job, really. And I think to survive in it, a lot of you might have to mix and match. You might have to do other jobs and bits of media and things along the way, but that actually isn't a bad thing, because I think doing those other things and those other jobs helps you to tell those stories and to convey those things in the media that you eventually work in. So, it's the biggest frustration I have with most people is that they're not prepared often to, I suppose, have that tough period, because when you come out of university, or some people might not have been to university, they may have tried to go. So I went straight into the media. I didn't actually go to university at all. Started making the tea and things like that. But there will be a period where it's tough for a few years. But I find that a lot of people aren't prepared for that, and sometimes they've got great skills, they've got great things they can offer, and after a couple of years they just give up because they can't cut it. And that, unfortunately, is the reality. There just aren't enough jobs to go around.
It's right. It's a very competitive industry, and there's not enough jobs and too many people. I think the important thing in that, when you're talking about actors, is that an actor always considers themselves an actor, even when they're doing tables or working in the bar.
Exactly.
And I think there has to be a kind of a mental attitude that you might be doing something that's not ideal, menial, beneath you, whatever at the moment, but essentially you are a filmmaker, a producer, a camera operator or whatever, and look for every opportunity where you can try those skills out. And the opportunity as well, which I kind of quite like to just talk a little bit about, the importance of networking, of today's like today, where you can actually meet people. I've spoken to somebody this morning about writing a couple of articles for a local magazine. We talked about all kinds of things, and just really the importance of network events, including the one Fast Train next week.
Which we're very pleased about. Yeah.
But do you manage to get out and about, Louise, to meet new people, and as part of your
Tonight I'm attending a networking event for media parents at Media City. And I think it's very important. I know there's one that BECTU has got one going tonight. in Salford as well for younger people in the industry.
Yeah, young members.
I think RIG and the Indie Club, they do a tremendous amount of work in this region, and there are a number of other associations like Manchester Digital, etc., that really bring people together and help pool ideas and pool resources. And an iterative ideas process is absolutely much stronger, and retaining your interest in that iterative ideas process is absolutely crucial. But I would stress that making sure that your skills are up to date and you've got the skills for the market that you're going for is really crucial. I'm sure you can all, in no matter how long or short your career has been so far, can think of the number of times the tech that you're working with has changed. So you still need the great stories, but are you clear in whatever field you're working, you're up to date with the tech? At the BBC, we've got R&D trainees, we've got graduates in software writing, we're training people in production management, a huge design, a huge set of training skills are being invested in, from series producing, we're teaching freelancers series producing, and also writing for drama, etc., just to keep the industry stoked. But those opportunities, people have to kind of step forward and take the opportunities that are there, so that their skills are on the money.
Well, the BBC has always had that key role as the kind of the main driver of training.
It's part of the Charter commitment. The Charter commitment requires the BBC to train the industry, so that, you know, this is one of the fast train. Obviously, is one of the key ways of doing it, and it's the first time we've done it in the north. So hopefully, there will be a big impact.
That's separate, really, from the kind of the whole ideas and production kind of things. There are kind of opportunities within those kind of niche digital areas that people could work on. Are these both kind of editing skills in addition to? Do
you mean in the events or the things that the BBC
within the
training?
BBC?
Yes, there is a gamut from broadcast engineering all the way through to, you know, classical radio and television production skills, and I put broadcast engineering at one end because that is very fast paced and fast changing, and there's a different set of skills. And in fact, we're waiting to hear back on apprenticeships in broadcast engineering because that is such a significant skills gap. So yes, there are specific opportunities as well as, you know, broad, open opportunities.
Again, something like creative skill set does actually say, okay, they might not be the sexiest opportunities within the industries, but we're looking for series producers, we're looking for
creative skill set provides bursaries on a number of different levels. Creative skill set will provide bursaries depending, you know, do you have to go on the website and have a look and see what they can support you in. But,
so that might be the other one, to say, well, I want to do this, they want me to do that, but actually what's needed is that bit in the middle that I could turn my skills towards. So I think it's that whole thing about kind of more than one way to skin the cat.
Adaptive and brave and resilient. It's a really strong message, actually.
But also from a trade union point of view, you know your value and have respect for yourself and all the rest, and don't feel as though you have to work utterly lunatic hours for no money on the basis that it might in several years' time down the line get you some paid work. Anyhow, we've only got about 5 or 10 minutes late.
Actually, you know, with my background, that I would find that I couldn't argue with a word of that. And so the BBC's apprenticeships, you know, they're all in roles that are roles. You know, so today, you look at the BBC, all the apprenticeships are in specific areas at BBC North where there are places and jobs for people to do, and they're all paid.
Yep.
I think that is a crucial. Obviously, it's crucial that the BBC takes a particular stand and sort of makes sure that they lead on that. But I couldn't agree with you more. It's important to be adaptive, but also
it's also important to put food on the table and not just have a you know, kind of.
That's not to say that you can't have work experience, though.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to be realistic here. When it comes to the indie sector, we don't get any money from the BBC and others until an idea has been commissioned. So people come to us with ideas. There ain't any money to pay you for your idea. We will work with you to make that happen. And if you get the idea off the ground, you will be part of that production, maybe the producer, whatever it may be. But unfortunately, in reality, you know, we're in exactly the same boat as you are, because we're constantly having to pitch to these people. And the budgets, particularly radio, aren't very big at all. You know, they're pretty small. So you just got to be realistic and understand the nature of the business that you might be engaging with. You mentioned the fast train thing there. We've got a session there which is going to be about working with radio indies and how you adapt to work with them. But we're also doing our own. Made in Manchester's doing our own seminars. You can go on our website. We do whole day seminars talking about how you work with indies and things. So
okay. Patrick, just one point on that. I mean, just in terms of your students and work experience. I mean, what did you have kind of guidelines for?
We do, and we do a sort of formal work experience. But we get approached a lot, actually, by people saying, I've got this great opportunity for your students, and it turns out they want, some free camera operators to shoot something. We have an absolute rule, which our students always have to get paid. And in fact, we won't let our students do any work experience unless they get paid at least 50 quid a day. And we're very strong about it. And actually, it's amazing, because almost everybody can find that money, and our students start to value their work as well, which is good. I just want to say one quick thing about working in production. A lot of the time, what you're looking for when you're hiring people in production is an extra skill over and above production skill and technical skill. A lot of the time, you're looking for somebody who can speak French, or somebody who understands astrophysics, because just to name but two people I've actually employed on the basis of those skills, because you need, if you're making a show in France, you need somebody who can set stuff up for you. I made a lot of science programs, and we literally had to have somebody who understood astrophysics to talk to all the professors who we couldn't understand when we were talking to them. And that having an extra string to your bow that you can offer, and it might be an interest. If you're really, really keen on football, why not apply to Manchester United TV, because you've got knowledge there that they will value over and above all the other people who are applying who know how to make programmes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just mention Fast Train, because I don't want to be left out? Thank you.
Good man.
Yeah. So we've probably got time for maybe one or two. We did start a little bit late. Just one or two questions. We've got our microphone ready. Anything? Yeah.
Hi, I'm here from a training provider. We're a college in Scotland. Just generally, how do you think the educational sector serves the industry? Which aspect is it good at, and which aspects is it not good at, and how should it respond to that?
I don't think it's very good at the indie sector. I don't think it understands the indie sector at all, and there's a lot more work got to be done there. There's so many people I meet at sessions like this who don't even know the indie sector exists. A lot of that is to do with our relationship with the big broadcasters, because often TV's a bit different, but in radio, our names are buried somewhat in production and things like that. There might be a little mention at the end of a programme on Radio 4 or whatever, but it's not. I mean, that's just the way it's developed. But there isn't really great promotion of what the indie sector is. So in my view, I think there does need to be a little bit more, understanding of how our world works. So yeah, I think it's also that there's other areas as well. I'm speaking as somebody who's a journalist by trade and worked in radio and done a bit of TV as well. I often feel as though there's a bit of there's a gap there as well sometimes with regards to, particularly on the presentation side, actually, particularly in radio. I used to find this in commercial radio, that people would come to me with all these, they'd done a fantastic degree in journalism, whatever. Get them behind a microphone, they couldn't speak at all, and particularly in commercial radio, you've literally got to get on with it. You've got to be on the air. A news editor in the commercial radio station needs to be able to know that the few journalists, often it's only two or three, that he's employing can actually speak and broadcast. So I think there are some gaps there, and I think, I do think that there's a lot more work that needs to be done between the universities and other training providers and the industry, definitely.
I think you're probably right there, actually. I mean, I think it's your tech. There's obviously skill set academies that have been set up that hopefully have got more connection via creative skill set with what's actually going on in the industry. I mean, I go around and do a lot of talks at FE colleges, universities, speaking with students, and obviously, we develop relationships. You get a chance to look at the coursework, attend final viewings, and it kind of varies so much between basically courses where nobody's actually been in the industry for 30 years and are still working with totally outdated practices, and other people who are completely up with the game, know exactly, got the right technology that segues. I'm thinking perhaps of Salford University, segues with what the BBC are using on their various multi-platforms. What I would like to do is kind of perhaps find out from Louise how the academies, BBC academies, is able to kind of try or attempting to build those kind of relationships with higher and further education.
Well, earlier this year we had a university day down in London, and I think around 90 universities attended, looking at this as an idea. I don't know how relevant this is to the audience, but this is about the tension or otherwise between our universities, somewhere to explore and to play, or to somewhere that creates new ideas and pushes boundaries, etc., or provides people who are fit to work. So there's a sort of a crossover point that I think this conversation is addressing, and what does that higher education establishment seek to do? More locally, the BBC Academy is working with Salford University on the site, and we're doing a number of different events in co-partnership with them, because of course we have the same and similar learning aims. They do a lot of continuing professional development. I'm working with York University and a number of other universities across the north as part of BBC North's programme to join up the supply pipeline. Yeah. It's not a very nice word. But it basically means all the people from the youngest age right through to professionals like yourself who are already working in the industry. What can we do across training providers to meet your needs and to keep the broadcast and digital industries thriving?
Yeah. And again, Patrick, that's York University has a fantastic reputation, certainly in the, from my own background in sound design, absolutely state of the art when I've been up there. What can a Scottish university do to kind of try and get into that race for attention, for their students to be head and shoulders above?
I mean, it's a really hard question to answer. I think the most important thing is actually the quality of the staff. I don't think it comes down to equipment. It's all about teaching how to do things the professional way, how to tell stories. Really, I don't honestly think it comes down to equipment. As you say, there's several universities now have got fantastic kit, including Salford and us. But to me that's. In 10 years' time, we might still have the same kit, but hopefully we'll still be teaching very high-level skills, even though the kit's slightly out of date. I honestly don't think it comes down to kit. It's a really difficult question to answer, because I think there's also areas that aren't taught very well. Now, I think my particular background is as a studio director, and I feel sort of really strongly that we haven't trained any studio people for a long time. It was interesting, actually, at the Fast Train meeting, because that was one of the things the BBC was saying, is that they can't get studio people. So again, that's a shortage area. If you want to almost guarantee yourself a job, become a broadcast engineer, because 80% of broadcast engineers are within 5 years of retirement, and there's just no people being trained. So broadcast engineering is a job for life, and there are other studio jobs actually where there's a great shortage. Sound operations on OBs, they can't get people. They cannot find people to do sound operations on OBs.
Studio cameramen, vision mixers, studio sound, studio lighting.
There is a very good vision mixing session at Fast Train.
There is. There's also television tasters.
I think we've probably got one time for one more question before the Fast Train leaves the station. Anyone?
Wish I'd thought of that.
I could also point out as well that afterwards we'll be around. I'll be on the BECTU stand. I'm sure people will be around for further chats, and that's obviously part and parcel. We want to engage with people.
John, can I have a quick word? Because can I just clear something up about Fast Train? That is deliberately, as I understand it, aimed at those who are already or have worked in broadcast television. Am I right?
No. Well, yeah, I hate to contradict. It's so rude, and I do apologise. I don't mean to contradict you. Fast Train North is the first time that this Fast Train brand has been brought up here, and it's also the first time that it's multi-platform. So we are trying, well, let's hope, and I feel we are succeeding to represent television and radio and digital. So there's sessions in app development, there's sessions in HTML, Java, the sessions in behavioural-driven software and engineering. So you can see from that the people there have not got broadcast credits. So there isn't a prerequisite for broadcast credits. That actually comes in from Creative Skills Set when they offer bursaries in television, do ask people to have broadcast credits. So that comes in from that side. We're asking for people who are freelancers or have short-term contracts, and that also acknowledges what Ashley touched on, and the fact that there are people who are working in big broadcast organisations on what some freelancers in television would consider a long contract. 6 months may feel like a long time to a lot of people who are on 6-week turnarounds. But also, if you're working in software development, your contracts tend to be longer.
And I think the other point on that, Peter, is that some people work in corporate, some people work in broadcast. These days, just as there's been a convergence of the technology, I think we will find that, camera operators will be doing, a local kind of community event this week, then they might be working on a broadcast programme, then filling in with corporate for the kind of bread and butter. I think really like an actor, that kind of range of skills, which happens within the profession anyhow, so it's certainly going to be open to anybody, I think, who's kind of got aspirations to work within broadcast. Am I right?
It certainly aspires to that, yeah. It's quite open.
It's quite open. Nobody will be turned away, put it that way. I think we're going to have to call it a day there. I'd like to thank the panel, Ashley, Louise and Patrick, for their useful contributions. We're going to be milling around, so if you want to come up, have a chat, buy us a drink, you're more than welcome. Okay, if you perhaps show your appreciation in the usual way.